Hello and welcome to Republic TV. Today we have with us Mr. Tarun Ghulati, the candidate who is running to be the London Mayor in 2024. Welcome to our studio, sir.
Thank you very much for having me today.
So what inspired you to run for this post?
Firstly, I'm all for public service. I see London is not what it was 20 years ago when I first landed there. People are suffering, cost of living is high, inflation is high, and people don't know whether to heat or to eat. So I want to bring the smiles back on each Londoner, change the policies, transform London, which Mr. Sadiq Khan has sort of brought to its knees now, and make sure it's the global city that everybody knows. It's number one in the city index for global cities. I want to keep it there and keep it thriving.
So as we are aware that you are an independent candidate for this election, why haven't you chosen a political side to run for it?
I was a member of the Conservative Party, and I felt sometimes when you're a member of party, you've got to toe the party line. And it takes a certain type of individual to take bold decisions. And I want to make a difference to all Londoners, all communities that live there, and some of the policies that either parties, the main parties are grappling with, I can do better as an independent.
Even as we speak, we are in the middle of a controversy with the sacking of Ms. Braverman. So we know what's happening, the stance of the current Prime Minister about, the Palestinian protests. Why to be chosen? What would your take be in the matters of, immigrants protesting in London? What is your stand on this matter?
The world is at an inflection point. Never have we faced a situation where the risks are higher. And I think whilst peaceful protests should always be welcome because there are civilians involved, a humanitarian crisis is probably unfolding. But on the other side, what happened on 7th October with terrorism, that also needs to be stopped. So both sides have the stance. I think some senior leaders to sit together across a table, they need to find lasting peace here and they need to find a solution. So peaceful protestations are all right. A certain individual may have said something. We should not incite certain sentiments at this stage.
Okay. So you think the situation is very volatile and shouldn't be sort of provoked further?
Exactly. We need to tread carefully, as I hinted earlier, and people need to be cautious. The words do matter, and they can arouse sentiments of the type that should be avoided.
There is another angle to all these protests that happen in that great city, which is that, when the Indian High Commission, there were protests around it, we got to hear later that, the protesters were paid. So is there a sort of a remuneration or sort of a paid arrangement for protesters gathering at any place in London?
See, motivation is a factor. People can be motivated in different ways. Sometimes, as you hinted, maybe they are paid or they have some sentiments. But whatever happened, the Indian flag should never have been disrespected. That I am very unhappy about. And at the same time, it is the duty of the host nation to ensure security of the High Commissioner, the High Commission, and these individuals are not parachuted from somewhere. So if a set of people are walking somewhere in large numbers, the intelligence and other people, the police should have been warned and they should have stopped if they were protesting in the wrong way, which was probably the case in this case.
Coming back to the city itself, the concern of not just Indians but larger the Londoners is that the city is becoming more and more expensive to live in, for children to get educated, etc. Why you to step up and become the mayor? What would be the steps to make London livable and
You've raised
affordable?
A very, very valid point. About 14+ million people live below the poverty line. This is a study by the UN. And that basically suggests that people are not happy. You don't have the smiles when you don't have enough money. People are finding it difficult to heat their homes or to eat. So your weekly shop to the supermarkets is not giving you the same value as you would have spent. This is not helped in part by the war ongoing, as we know in Europe. But at the same time, the steps I would take, even if the government is not supporting, it will be my moral duty to make sure I bring the smiles back on each Londoner. So I have a levelling up agenda, which basically means that the last person should benefit. Each borough, there are 32 boroughs there, will benefit by that levelling up agenda. So I'll create job opportunities. I've always worked for the youth for the last 10, 12 years. I've uplifted youth in about 44 countries. There are a set of awards that are run, the 21st Century Icon Awards, which is not for profit. And I believe that sort of an upliftment of the youth, creating opportunities. there's a very robust startup ecosystem there, but 60% of the venture capital still comes from the US. I want it to be homegrown in the UK. And with that, what will happen is the SMEs benefit. So when businesses are thriving, trade flows are flowing in, and there's an FTA that is likely to be signed up soon, people start smiling, and things that we were discussing earlier, the situation will improve when people are happier.
What is your take on this whole buzz around the emission-free zone in London?
Well, I'll abolish it on day one. If Mr. Khan is watching and Londoners are watching, this will be abolished on day one. It's basically paying £12.50, which impacts your freedom of movement. So if you're moving from one zone to the other and you're paying £12.50, it's onerous. On top of that, there's a congestion charge there in central London, around that area, £15. So I'm going to abolish congestion charge over the weekends and on holidays. Bus routes have been impacted, buses have been reduced, police is not visible. Security is an issue, crime is rising. I want to bring that down. I want to increase the number of police, increase the number of police stations. I want to see visible policing, monitoring the police on a league table. Why should there be crime when the policeman is on the beat? You know, affordable housing. People are not living below standards because rents are high. So I want to make that impact. So I want to bring about transformation, change, so that everybody moves along. All communities need to benefit.
What are the 2 or 3 things that London needs to really take up on an urgent basis to stay competitive with other EU cities?
Yes, that's a very good question. If you look at the number of global headquarters of Fortune 500 companies, they have dropped in London from about 24 to 14 today. Why has that happened? Because costs have gone up. They moved to other cities in Europe. If you don't control that, don't give incentives to people, make sure they stay there, then obviously these headquarters means you create more jobs, you bring in more investments in, that is going to come down. So I want to make sure I'm traveling to other heads of states, I'm meeting with them to make sure there's a diaspora. There are about 300 languages spoken in London, so there are different people that live there, meet some of the key heads of state. We're making sure that there's a living bridge, like I'm here in India, which takes advantage of the trade flows, business flows, which then make sure that everybody is thriving. So that's one angle, but also making sure people have opportunities, job opportunities. There are people there who can't read and write properly. So you want to make sure the youth, there are children who need the meals over, free lunches and all that. I will make all that available.
Fantastic. We know that there's a huge community of Indian students studying in London, but even as they are, their parents can't travel freely to London because of the visa issues. Any thoughts on that?
I think short-term visa is an issue, all right. Even the students who are allowed to stay there for 2 years, I think Indians add value wherever they go. The Indian companies are some of the largest employers in the UK. So they're not only adding valuation, they're adding value. And we need to encourage the freedom of movement for Indians and make sure these visas are granted expeditiously so that the parents who wish to go there and meet their kids are allowed to do so. I will work with the government to make sure they take advantage of this diaspora, which is adding so much of value.
Where do you think Mr. Sadiq Khan has failed London?
I think he's failed London's all over, because whilst he started with a strong mandate and did well, but today, as you look at it, people are tired of some of his policies. ULEZ, crime, affordable housing, you look at it, business flows are not there, costs are high, and some of it is beyond his control maybe. Some of these funding may or may not be coming from the government, but whereas he looked further ashore to bring in investments, it needs a certain type of individual who understands money, and I understand that quite well, to make sure even the government is not bringing the money, it's my moral responsibility. I'm already talking to people, and that's one of the reasons I'm here, so that I can bring in the investments, so that there's an upliftment, overall upliftment of the people there. So he's failed people as we speak, and his time to hand over the keys to me on 2nd of May 2024 has come.
So once selected, which side of the political scale will you?
I'm not a rightist, I'm not a leftist. I believe in collaborative management. There needs to be, London was a set of villages, if you know what I mean. So whilst you take a decision, and some of them may be bold, you need to take people along with you, need to understand their problems, need to study them, listen to them. So I'm listening to people, understanding their issues. So I will be somebody for the people. I want to bring smiles back. So whether it means sometimes being on one end of the spectrum, it doesn't matter. You're there for the people. Good for London is what is important to me.
More power to you, Mr. Gulati.
Thank you
Thanks
so much.
for being with us.
It's been a pleasure.
Thanks.